With just a week to go until the Brexit deadline, the official one for this time around, the UK is waiting on a decision by the European Union on any extension to the date. It seems that an extension is coming, but for how long? Will it give enough time for the government to go back to the polls, to try and clear the air in Parliament with a newly voted chamber, or will it just be enough time to debate the Johnson deal presented by the Prime Minister last week? Jerry Jones joins us now from Cicero Group, where he's senior counsel providing political advice to blue chip clients. It's good to talk to you. The extension likelihood, there seems to be a little bit of wrangling going on within the EU as to perhaps possibly maybe how long, but do you think we'll get an extension?
I think the EU will agree an extension. The strong likelihood is that they will follow the guidance of the Ben Act, which called for a 3-month extension till the end of January. There is some toing and froing, particularly the French President Emmanuel Macron, as we've seen in the past, wants to, if you like, play hardball and to demonstrate his impatience. Well, I think we're all impatient, but he seems particularly so with the process at the moment, and to suggest that there should be a shorter extension. It seems sensible, really, that we'll end up with a middle ground, which is that they'll say the final date would be 31st of January, but they would prefer the UK government to agree and ratify this deal beforehand, which would leave the way open to getting it all done earlier.
OK, so in that period, assuming it is the 31st of January, what do you see politically happening in this country to try and clear the parliamentary air, as I said?
Well, Boris Johnson then has a dilemma. He has to work out whether or not he wants to pursue a parliamentary track to get his deal done, or to try to go to the country for a general election, which actually he can only do that through the approval of Parliament one way or another anyway. The attraction of the parliamentary route to getting his deal done must be that, well, he's put a lot of political capital into this. He's been negotiating in good faith, as we've seen with the European Union, and in great detail. He's come back with a deal, and he's managed to get that approved at second reading, so an overall parliamentary majority, suggesting that they would be willing to support the broad parameters of that deal. That's a pretty big accomplishment for the Prime Minister. Would he really throw that all away at this stage? Well, the reason that I think Dominic Cummings is in his ear saying that he should do is because Labour is really weak. The polls suggest that Boris Johnson is enjoying a significant bounce at the moment. And if the whole ethos behind the general election for a campaign for the Conservatives is to be it's the people versus Parliament, then he should seize the fact that Parliament has, in his view, obstructed him as another opportunity to advance that case.
To what degree, if we look at the Leave and Remain camps and how they're spread across Parliament at the moment, to what degree do you fear for the Remain argument, because they are relatively so fractured? On the Leave side, you've got basically the Brexit party and the Tories, the majority of the Tories. On the other side, you've got Labour, you've got Lib Dems, you've got the Greens, you've got the Independents, possibly also DUP now as well.
Well, there is a bigger overall Remain grouping in Parliament, substantially bigger than Leave. And that's one of the things that people like Steve Baker obviously repeatedly complain about. But you rightly say that there are lots of different tonalities and different priorities within that Remain grouping that makes it harder for them to unify around a particular proposition. I think that Remain strategists, if you like, there will be significant disquiet when they saw Boris Johnson peel off 19 Labour MPs and get them to come over to his side and support his deal, and they might feel that the momentum is running against them. Having said that, there is no doubt that if Boris Johnson tries to advance his deal through Parliament based on an extension that's been granted by the European Union, there are issues that could generate substantial levels of parliamentary support. Perhaps a customs union, though I think that may well fall short. But most notably, trying to ensure and protect against another cliff edge at the end of the transition period in 2020. That's the sort of thing I really do feel as though you could see the same sort of alliance building up and winning the day as did over the Ben Act that tied the Prime Minister's hands.
One final question goes back to the point I made about you and your client base and the blue chip clients you're talking to and that you serve. There was a letter in the Telegraph last week, 290 chief executives or senior people within British business saying basically for goodness sake, just get on with it. We want clarity, we want vision, we want some sort of clearance of this fog in the air at the moment around Brexit and the economy. And they see that as being the main thing. Just get on with it. What are you hearing and what are you telling clients?
I think overall the message from business has been very consistent. A cliff edge is the most damaging outcome. There aren't very many businesses that have any attraction or are attracted in any way towards no deal. Most want to see a smooth and orderly transition period towards a free trade agreement down the track. So I think really the issue a lot of the time for business is that their argument is consistent, but it's one that politicians have heard. There's not a lot that is, if you like, fresh or new in it. And ultimately, none of the politicians, there was an initial period, the honeymoon over August, where it did look as though Boris Johnson might be able to really make the weather. And then there's absolutely great merit in getting in there and trying to ensure that the priorities of individual businesses or business groupings are resolutely aligned with the dominant grouping, not just within government but within Parliament. But at the moment, the reality is that nobody has the whip hand, nobody's really in control, not the Prime Minister, not the Leader of the Opposition, and in that sort of a paralysed dynamic, unfortunately, the reality is that it's hard for any message from any influential quarter to break through.
So what do business want to see? Do they just want to see an election? Would they prefer that? Obviously, they'd like to get the deal over the line. It doesn't look like it's possible. People's vote, of course, is the other option.
Well, not all people in business have the same view. Some would love to turn the clock back and pretend this had as though this had never happened. Some would support revoke. Some would support a people's vote, another referendum. I think the bulk have come to accept, even if they are not all by any means are enthusiastic about it, that the vote happened, that Brexit is going to happen, and the job of government is to manage that in a way that is least damaging to businesses and people's livelihoods, their employment and their prosperity. And that's an argument that is being made consistently, but business people, as I think most people out in the country, are increasingly despairing about the ability of the politicians to bring that to bear for whatever their good intentions.
OK, well, let's hope that we do get a smooth transition. But Joey, in the meantime, thanks indeed for joining us. Joey Jones from Cicero Group.